Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Burn. I'm your host, Eric Miller. I'm joined today by a bold progressive, a fierce and fiery fighter. I'm honored to chat with Mr. Solomon Rajput. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Eric.
Thanks for joining me. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah,
Rajput?
Solomon Rajput. Yep.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, it's nice to chat with you. I've been supporting progressives and trying to platform candidates around the country, and you're challenging kind of a corporate Democrat, and we'll talk about her, Debbie Dingle, as we go. But just a bit of backstory. I want to talk about your platform and all that kind of stuff, and but just a bit of background, like what inspired you to run?
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually a medical student, and I'm taking leave of absence to run because I think the issues in our country are way too urgent, and we're done waiting on our politicians to do something about it. When I tell people that I'm a medical student and I'm running for Congress, everyone gets so confused. They're like, "A medical student? How does a medical student decide to run for Congress? I don't get it. Like, is that even allowed?" And I understand it's a very strange thing. I've got a halfway decent answer to how this whole thing came about, though. When I was younger, I was really passionate about politics because I was taking a look at our messed up status quo. And I was thinking, it'd be really great to do something about these issues. Maybe I'll get involved in politics or government to try to solve some of these problems. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, oh, wait, actually, you can't count on the government to get anything done. Like, they will literally never do anything because they're just bought and sold by big businesses. And so I realized I could never sign up to be a shill to corporations. So I guess I couldn't go into politics, and ultimately I ended up in something else. And I was like, I guess I'm going to do something else. And so ultimately I ended up in medicine because it's a way to help people when they're going through a really tough time. But now times are changing, which is really exciting. We've got a whole new generation of leaders who are saying we're not going to be beholden to corporate interests any longer. We're going to go out there and fight unapologetically for what people in this country need for us to get on. So it's like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Rashid Ghali, Ilhan Omar. That really inspired me. And I was thinking maybe if we get the right people in office, we actually can do something about these big issues for once. And so ultimately, I decided to run after thinking about it for a long time because the establishment has totally failed us. I mean, all they know how to do is to think small. But it's that same small thinking that's gotten us into this mess in the first place. I mean, I think by now it's clear to everyone that we can't just keep putting band-aids on our broken systems and expecting things to change. We need to go out there and fight for the big, bold policies that are going to address our issues at a fundamental structural level. So we've begged and pleaded with our politicians for a long time to go out there and fight for these changes, but they've ignored us time and time again. And after a while, we have to realize we can only beg for so long before it's clear that these people, they're never going to go out there and fight for what we need to get done.
Yeah.
They're never going to change. So if we want to get this stuff done, we got to go to ourselves because at this point, we're done waiting.
Right on. Yeah, in fact, they're paid to not change, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so obviously you're not taking any corporate PAC money, grassroots funded campaign.
100%.
Yeah, going up against a pretty well entrenched corporate Democrat. I want to talk about just the dynastic nature of her role, right? So I think I saw 86 years that a dingle has held this seat, right? And that is a proper last name, right? It was her husband for 59 years, is that right? And then his father before that. So yeah, can you speak to kind of the need for change? Like how can you be a leader if you're constantly electing history? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 87 years of ruling political family, essentially owning a congressional seat. It seems kind of counter to what this whole democracy thing is about. So, we don't think that that's how democracy should work. And people ask, well, how have they held this seat for so long? And it's because people are scared to go against them. Like a lot of people are really scared because if you're in politics, you are, and if you lose the race, then you've like made a very, very powerful enemy. And that's
Mm,
kind of why we need somebody to go up against Congresswoman Dingle, who is not involved in politics, who has no political who has no like political reputation to put on the line. Really, it's just like if for me, I'm running because of the issues that I care about and the issues that I think Congresswoman Dingle is not a champion on. And if I lose, like, it's not going to affect me at all. Like, I'm just going back to medical school. But if I win, then we can really change the paradigm and change what the representative of this district is championing. And the thing is, this is a very progressive district. There's one thing to be in power for 87 years and be totally like in line with what your district is saying, but this district is very, very progressive. I mean, 70% of the vote goes to the Democrat here in this district. But Congresswoman Dingell, unfortunately, often acts as if this is a swing district, that's where she has to really like be on the fence. She was she was the last Democrat in all of Michigan to come out in support of impeachment. I think it was like the night before, the morning of, and two candidates or two members of the House who actually had won in 2018 and had taken back Trump districts had come out for impeachment ahead of her. You know what I mean? Like before her.
Yeah.
So, Congresswoman Dingell, perfectly nice person, but she's not a progressive. She doesn't support the Green New Deal. She doesn't support making college free, eliminating student debt. She doesn't support getting big money out of a political system. She's taken almost $2 million in corporate PAC donations. And she also doesn't support a whole host of other pieces of the progressive agenda, like federal rent control, abolishing ICE, defunding the police, specifically taking a portion of police budgets and allocating it towards community services. So those are all things that I support and that our campaign unapologetically supports. And I think, we're a progressive district. We deserve a progressive representative.
Right on. Yeah, and there are things like I'm not trying to sing her praise necessarily, but she is supportive of Medicare for all, which is a bit of an anomaly for a corporate Democrat. But
yeah,
you mentioned the Green New Deal, and that is tied directly to, I'm assuming she has fossil fuel donors. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so Congresswoman Dingell has taken tens of thousands of dollars from fossil fuel donors, and she has hundreds of thousands of dollars in her own personal wealth invested in the fossil fuel industry. So she's taking money from ExxonMobil, from DTE, from Marathon, from a whole host of other people. And so, this is a district that cares a lot about climate change. We have, at our climate strike that we had in the fall, there were thousands and thousands of people from this district who came to support the aggressive climate action that we need and like a Green New Deal, right? So people really, really care about the environment here. People are very progressive here. I mean, Michigan is the Great Lakes state. The environment, there are fewer states that have the environment be such an important part of our state identity, So so we are we're a state we're a district that cares a lot about climate change. But for some reason, Congresswoman Dingell refuses to sign on to the Green New Deal, and it's really starting to anger voters. I mean, if you drive around Ann Arbor, which is where I'm from, there are people who have lawn signs that say "I'm a climate voter," and those are that's pretty prominent throughout the whole district. So yeah, Congresswoman Dingell is not fighting for the Green New Deal, unfortunately.
That's I'm glad to hear those signs exist. I want to share just a bit of the map, right? Just this district was redistricted, I guess, a few years ago, but a lot of times people don't necessarily know where their district is. I hate to say it that way, but they almost deliberately make them confusing to suppress the vote, right? So I like to show the districts when I can. So this is Michigan's 12th, and it kind of goes from Ann Arbor, I guess, to do you want to talk about a little bit north of Detroit? Dearborn is in your district, I think.
Yeah. So I love our district. It is just like a bunch of very, very different places all in one district. It is there are essentially four big regions. So there's Ann Arbor, which is where the University of Michigan is, and so it's a very college town. It's a very educated town. There's a good amount of diversity in our town. So Ann Arbor, and then there's Ypsilanti, which is just right next to Ann Arbor, and that's a town that is a much bigger minority population, and it's striking because the 10-minute drive between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, there's only a 10-minute drive between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, but Ypsilanti has almost 10-year lower life expectancy. So it's an area that is, which is shocking. It's an area that has been really neglected, left behind. They really struggle with issues around racial justice there, gentrification, affordable housing issues. And then we've got this area called Dearborn, which is right by Detroit, and it's the biggest Muslim population center in the United States of America. So there are so many people who are from Middle Eastern background, from Middle Eastern descent there, and so they've never had Muslim representation. So that's another area where, and that's actually where Debbie Dingell is from, and that's kind of their. But and like despite like having so many Muslim people, they've never had any federal representation. And then there's one other region called Downriver, which is a assortment of towns, often like small manufacturing towns that have really been hit hard uh, by the bad trade deals that have been prioritizing corporate profits over what is best for American workers. So that region in particular would really benefit from a Green New Deal, which would create millions of good paying green energy jobs to transition our entire economy off of fossil fuels in the 10 short years that we have left. So that's our district in a nutshell.
Right on. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I have a few questions in that. So
Yeah.
that life expectancy drop off, is there anything environmental that causes that? Is there like a Superfund site around there or anything like that? Do you know like why? You mentioned some of the causes, but I mean that's a real drop off there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest injustice is poverty, right? And so like there is Ypsilanti is like Ann Arbor's a very like wealthy, educated,
Hmm.
much more white town, and Ypsilanti is a much higher minority population town, and it just where and it's been really heavy hit by the fact that there there are like so many black people who are just been systematically oppressed for hundreds of years that live in that
Right.
town.
Right.
So as we know, like what are some of the issues that affect the black population's life expectancy? Well, a lot of people don't have health care, right? A lot of people are working minimum wage jobs. They have to work multiple jobs in order to be able to afford, in order to be able to like keep a roof over their heads and just barely survive, right? And like, Ann Arbor, we have a huge affordable housing problem, and people have um, eloquently said that Ann Arbor's affordable housing plan is Ypsilanti, because people from Ann Arbor will just move to Ypsilanti, and now that's like causing a lot of gentrification, and now people from Ypsilanti are having a hard time being able to afford their own rent. So it's just like a whole host of issues. I think definitely it could be largely a large chunk of that disparity in life expectancy could be solved through a Medicare for all system that would guarantee healthcare to all people in this country. Because a lot of people have lost their health insurance through the coronavirus pandemic, but a lot of people didn't even have it to begin with because their jobs did not view it as a benefit that they needed to provide. Um, and truthfully, it should just be something that everyone has automatically, because right now so many people, especially so many black people, do not have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Here, here. Well said. I want to ask about, you mentioned there's manufacturing jobs. So this district is next to Rashida Tlaib's district, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Um, yeah. So you mentioned the manufacturing
Yeah,
jobs. Can you talk
yeah,
about
it is.
the the sort of the need for the Green New Deal? But one of the things that doesn't get spoken about nearly enough, you said it's in a very environmentally aware district. Can you talk about the just transition when it comes to manufacturing, and if there's auto workers in that district, that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of auto workers that live in our district because, of course, Michigan is the car capital of America, and we've got the auto manufacturers here. So we definitely have a large portion of um, people in labor unions who are working auto jobs. Um, the great thing is that the Green New Deal would be a huge boon for the car industry because it would be it would subsidize electric vehicles, and so the Green New Deal plan that we're supporting would actually really encourage consumers to get rid of their gas guzzling car and purchase electric vehicles and try to make it like very, very cheap for them by like subsidizing the purchase of those vehicles. So, the Green New Deal plan that we support would create an electric vehicle infrastructure across the country to actually enable people across the country to buy electric vehicles. And a lot of those electric vehicles would be made from the companies here in Michigan and in our district and the adjacent district. So couldn't agree more with that. And then, of course, the Green New Deal will be creating tons of jobs that are local, right? So, like, we'll need to install solar panels locally, wind turbines locally. We also want to retrofit all buildings to be energy efficient locally. And also, something that Michigan really struggles with is we have no mass transit at all, like
Mm.
at all. So we have a lot of towns, especially in Southeast Michigan, that are highly populated, but like you cannot get from one town to another except for a car. Like we have
Right.
a very, very small bus system that goes from like one town to another, but there's nothing that's connecting this region. And so the Green New Deal is also going to heavily invest in mass transit, like the rest of the developed world has. So you don't need a car to get around every place in this country. You can get around using a system that's designed for people, not for cars.
Right on. Yeah, I want to pull up some of the things that you're fighting for, and that is on the list. I think you called it smarter transportation, right? So, um, yeah, so that's great. Just some, Medicare for all, Green New Deal. We talked about that. Free public college, eliminate student debt, racial justice, getting money out of politics. You stand with Palestine. Debbie Dingell voted against the BDS movement. Just talk about any of those that you want to. What are those you want to hit on?
Yeah, so Congresswoman Dingell, with Dearborn, right, we have the biggest Muslim population center in the world, in the country. Um, the big thing that upsets people of this district, especially Muslim people in this district, is that Congresswoman Dingell voted against a bill called HR 2407 in particular, and that bill is a bill that was supposed to protect the human rights of the Palestinian children by saying that we should not provide any funding that would go towards any activities that would harm the children of Palestine, like any detention centers or any kind of like military actions that would harm the children of Palestine. So that is an issue that people were very upset about here in our district and in Dearborn when Congresswoman Dingell actually had her name on it and actually took her name off of it. So that's one thing in particular. Another, we talk about the Green New Deal, we talk about Medicare for all. This district has 6 colleges and universities in it. It's a very like highly populated student district. It has a lot of young people in this district who have just graduated college, and so there are a lot of people in this district with student debt, right? And like student debt is such a uniquely American problem. People from other countries, they look at how much we have to pay for school and they get so confused. They're like, how do Americans pay that much for school? They must be so rich. And we're like, no, my friend, that's not what's going on. We just spent decades of our adult lives in student debt. And so that's why we need to cancel all student debt and make college free. But people love to ask, well, how are you going to pay for that? And the answer is we're going to use the vast wealth and resources of the richest country that's ever existed in the history of mankind. I mean, we're not a poor country that's just barely getting by. We've got all this money, but we keep spending on dumb crap like our bloated military budget and these useless wars and like corporate tax breaks. I mean, the amount of money we give to corporations and tax breaks, it's more money than we need to eliminate all student debt in this country. So, I mean, when was the last time you heard someone say, well, how are we going to pay for this war? How are we going to pay for these tax breaks? They never say that. But we want to improve when we want to improve the life. When we want to do something to improve the lives of our own people, all of a sudden we don't have enough money for it. Why not? I mean, it's clearly just a matter of priorities, right? And so we're a progressive district, and we should have an unapologetic progressive champion, right? And like not every district can afford that, right? Like not every district, some districts are very red, some districts are very purple, but this is just a very, very blue district. So I feel like we have a duty as a very blue district to have a progressive champion that can really help craft the national conversation around these issues.
Right on. Yeah, and you mentioned that student debt is a bit of a uniquely American thing, and that's also true for medical debt, right? And like you say, if it's a solidly blue district, that those are the districts that need to be out there on this end of the bell curve, fighting the fight. They need to be, leading the charge. So yeah, it's a safe blue district. So, I mean, this is where we need fighters, maybe the most, right? Uncorrupted fighters. So, let's talk a little bit about, racial justice. That's in the news quite a bit lately. We have, unidentified officers just throwing people in vans, and fascism is creeping in. Just talk about all of that. What's your position on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our whole campaign slogan is "We're done waiting," right? And what community has had to wait longer for justice than the Black community in this country? I mean, if we look at our history, it's just been a series of oppressive systems that have tried to keep Black people down in this country, right? Like first, slavery, then sharecropping, then Jim Crow, and now we've got police brutality and mass incarceration. So I think that we need to recognize that our racist system and our racist country is not going to be reformed through few simple tweaks. We owe it to the Black community to use this moment to think much bigger than we have. And so that's why our campaign supports sweeping legislation and really big policy proposals, and we're not like just trying to shy away or just nibble at the edges to like say that we did something, you know. So this is what our campaign supports. So we do support demilitarizing and defunding the police. Specifically, what we mean by that is taking a portion of police budgets and reallocating it to community services that might be more appropriate for the emergencies that take place in a community, right? So like, why does the police have to provide why does the police have to provide like or like, why are police officers called when there's like a mental health concern, or then there's a concern about homeless people, or when there's a concern about like addiction, right? Like, why is the institutional police the institution that is the catch-all? You know, there should be like institutions that are more appropriate for the emergencies at hand. And also, you know, we're always talking about how we have no funding for education, but we managed to find the funding for the police. So why don't we use some of these local police budgets and direct it towards educating our children so that we don't keep falling behind the rest of the world? So we support demilitarizing, defunding the police. We also support, you know, a whole host of other progressive policy items. Like, we want to federalize marijuana legally because so many Black people have been thrown in jail based on from marijuana convictions. We want to expunge the records of all people with marijuana convictions. We want to end cash bail. We want to abolish for-profit prisons and the prison industrial complex. Yeah, so we want to do like all kinds of things to be able to. We want to end like mandatory minimums. You know, like we want to do a whole host of things in order to like bring racial justice or to this country. We also have to recognize that, you know, criminal justice reform is only a small piece of racial justice, right? Like we were talking about, Black people have much worse healthcare outcomes, or like much worse health outcomes than other populations because they don't have healthcare, right? So that's why we need Medicare for all. Black people are in a lot more student debt than other populations. That's why we need to make college free. We need to increase the minimum wage. We need to have affordable housing and national rent control. So, you know, we're not going to experience racial justice in this country unless we have systemic solutions and not just focus on criminal justice reform.
Right on. Yeah, I like the way you started that off. I think it was James Baldwin that said, "You asked my grandfather to wait, you asked my father to wait, you asked my uncle to wait." Right? How much longer can we wait? You know, I love the framing of that, and you know that you know the fact that you have that as your mantra of your campaign, you know, demonstrates in a very real way what your motivations are, right? If you don't take corporate PAC money, you don't take the corporate donations, you're not motivated by, you know, a post office lobbying job or any of that stuff. You're motivated by justice. You're motivated by, you know, economic justice, racial justice, you know, all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, you know, let's try to get Solomon elected here. The election is August 4th, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? So that's only 2 weeks away.
I know, it's literally in 2 weeks. So the election is on August 4th. Yeah, no, I mean, our campaign slogan is "We're done waiting," right? And it is the reason why I decided to like leave in the middle of medical school to try to like take on these issues, you know, and like, you know, that's why I took a leave of absence, because we are done waiting on our politicians to act. And you know, my biggest issue is the Green New Deal, because for me, right, thinking about climate change, that's essentially the issue that really pushed me over the edge to run, because, you know, as I'm sure you can imagine, running for the first time, running against this political dynasty, never having run for office before, having, you know, like no money, right? Like it was definitely like a big, being barely old enough to run for, it was like definitely a big decision to make. But I kept thinking about this idea of climate change, and we've, you know, I've got like 5 or 6 years before I become a full-fledged practicing doctor, like, you know, between like medical school and the training I need to do. But we only have 10 years left to act on this issue. So like, what kind of world would I be entering into as a doctor if we don't, or as somebody who ultimately wants to have a family, if we don't take care of this in the short amount of time that we have left to act on it? So that's like really what pushed me in the race. And we've had an unbelievable campaign. I'm so proud and happy of like the campaign that our team was able to build. Our whole strategy to win is to create a huge army of committed young people to go out there and talk to all the voters in our congressional district. And so we've been calling people like crazy, texting people, sending them mailers, sending social media ads, like all kinds of things. Right now, so many ballots have been sent out because of coronavirus and people like wanting to vote by mail. So if you are watching and you're from our district, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, Dearborn, Downriver, you can go to solomonrajput.com/vote, and that site will show you like how you can request your absentee ballot. Today is also the last day to register to vote online. So if you want to register to vote online, please do so today. And you can also find that link at solomonrajput.com/vote. And you can just take a look at like our policies, our platform. If you want to throw us a couple dollars to like fund our grassroots campaign, you can also do that at solomonrajput.com as well.
Right on. And people can probably volunteer there to send out texts, make some calls as well, right?
Exactly, for sure.
Right on. So August 4th is the day. Yeah, let's help get Solomon across the finish line. So go check out his site. And I thank you for taking a break from your medical studies to make a run at public service. It's demonstrative of who you are as a person, and I hope that warrants or yields some success in this race.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So Godspeed. So. And then I'll talk to you in the general, right? How's that?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And it's great. In our district, we don't have to do this whole like, but like, will the progressive be able to go up against a Republican thing? Like nobody has ever said that because 70% Democratic district, right? Like whoever wins the general and we're good. So we don't have to do this like game theory thing where people are like, oh, but who's going to be more electable? Like we don't have that. We don't have that problem, Right. So it's going to be great.
Yeah. And it's a change year. So yeah, good luck to you, sir. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. Good luck on August 4th. And we'll talk to you on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to you later. Take care.
Thank you, Solomon.
Bye-bye.